Truth is center here. I'm making a video on the political compass because I've watched a few videos today of people who are fairly popular on YouTube making a video about the political compass and their explanations of each question. And I feel like their answers or responses to the questions were not as accurate as they could be, and possibly misleading to people who are watching. So I decided to make my own video on the political compass, just to give people a different perspective, maybe a more truthful perspective, something without any bias, because my whole idea here is to promote truth, objective truth, right? Something we all can agree on without any political ideology at all, right? The whole point is to have a world where people are not splitting themselves up into groups based on a belief, right? We're supposed to come together on the truth so we can progress as a society. And so hopefully some of my answers will educate someone, hopefully one person, and change their idea maybe a little bit. So let's have a go at it. All right, so let's start here. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Well, so if basically global exchange and trade, it should serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Well, humanity is supposed to be served by corporations, right? Because that's why you buy something, because humanity is like the customer of a company. So I believe a corporation is supposed to serve humanity. That's the point, right? If they're not, then they would go out of business, right? A product is like food, food at a restaurant. It's being served to you, a service, right? So, but should it primarily serve humanity? Well, over what? Not serving them? Well, then what? It goes out of business. So I guess I would have to agree with that, because if it's the only way a business can work, right? It's right. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. Well, I guess that doesn't make any sense, because I don't agree with everything that my country does, right? Let's say we go over to some country and assassinate their leader, right? Or let's say our country poisons our water. I don't agree with that, right? But I could see myself siding with us if, let's say, there was some ultimate decision, me or them, right? If it was our country versus another country, and we were going to destroy it if we didn't do something that I disagree with, right? I guess I could see myself siding with the country at sometimes if it was wrong, but not always, right? See, this is a trick. Always. So I have to disagree. I wouldn't always support it no matter what. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Nobody chooses their body, so it's foolish to be proud of your body. How about that? Or nobody chooses themselves, so is it foolish to be proud of yourself? I'm not a big person who gets a lot out of pride, but to say that you can never be proud of anything or your country at all. I mean, if you contribute to your country, are you not allowed to be proud of your contribution, right? And so I think that obviously pride in excess is dangerous, but pride in, say, in a small way that helps confidence, I could totally see that being maybe useful. So to say it's foolish, I have to disagree. Because you can contribute to your country even if you didn't choose it, right? And you can improve it. So let's see. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Many. Okay. So is that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 100? I believe that each race has a superiority in maybe some way. The data isn't totally out for like IQ and all that stuff, and creativity, and but it's pretty clear that some races on average are taller, which would be superior in, let's say, playing basketball, right? Or maybe produce more testosterone so that you'd be better at building muscle. That's totally legit and proven. But to say that's like general, like you're superior in general, I'd say it's a pretty unique situation in which those would be superior, and it doesn't necessarily impact your overall outcome in life. So to say there's many, and that might be overstepping it. There's definitely one or two. So I'm gonna have to disagree with that because the data's not out on how many there are, but there definitely is possibly one or two. But again, I don't think it defines like your outcome in life entirely, right? So let's see here. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why would the enemy of my enemy automatically be my acquaintance just because they're my enemy's enemy? I mean, what if they're equally as bad as my enemy in a different way? This isn't. I don't agree in like this gang up theory. Like, oh, we both disagree with this guy, so let's take him out or something. Don't agree with that. I think you have to judge each person by their principles, not just like who's more like you, right? So I'm gonna have to disagree with that. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Is sometimes. That's another tricky word because to say that it's never justified under any situation, I think is a mistake. I'm sure that there's some way that defying international law could be justified. So I'm going to have to agree, because to say that it's never justified ever, I mean, you could easily come up with some situation where defying international law would be justified, right? To say it's never, it's like, come on, like it's hard to make a blanket statement over something like that, right? It's like saying abortion is never okay. It's like, okay, you could say that, but like in reality, it's just not practical because there's always going to be some reason that's like super crazy, super rare, that's like, all right, we'll let it slide this time, right? And I think that this is like that same type of thing, that to put a yes or no on sometimes it's just like, you can't say it's definitely no or definitely yes. So there is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Okay, so a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. So is it bad that learning information is entertaining? Is it bad to make learning fun? I don't see that as a problem. In fact, making information entertaining could actually make learning more enjoyable and actually more productive. I think the problem is that when entertainment gets fused with disinformation, right? Um, or biased information, one-sided information. I think that's the problem. Having somebody make a YouTube video that's like entertaining and teaches you at the same time, I don't see any problem with that at all. It's actually probably better. A lot of YouTube videos I've seen that are exciting, people say, "Oh man, I wish my classroom was this exciting. I've learned more in this YouTube video than I did all through high school," right? So I'm gonna have to strongly disagree with that, because I just don't see where making information entertaining is bad, so long as they're honest about the information, right? If they're promoting disinformation, that's a totally different concept. It didn't say disinformation, it said information. So information is supposed to be true, right? So if they focus on that and make it entertaining, I think it's a positive all around. So I'm gonna have to strongly disagree there. All right, people are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Well, let's see. If somebody is rich, they can pretty much live wherever they want. Statistics show that, I guess you could say black people are more concentrated in city environments, urban environments. But is that because of their race or their nationality? Okay, so let's say we gave $1 million to any black individual in one of these statistically concentrated areas. Now, would their, let's say their nationality, right, or their race keep them in there, or would that money be able to allow them basically to live anywhere? I would have to go more with that, right? I think people are not too segregated by nationality. I think it's more about money, because you can go anywhere in this country. Who's like, you can't go here, we don't want your money because you're this nationality? I just don't think that exists. It might exist like in one scenario, but as a mass scale, like ultimately divided, I'd have to say it's class, because the money is more important, I think, than like your nationality. Ultimately, right? Ultimately, 99%, 99.999% of the time, I think that's what you're going to run into. So I just have to say it's, I agree with the class versus nationality, right? Money versus race, or whatever. Is a guy from England gonna have a problem here? Nah, I don't think so. I think it's gonna be his wallet. Okay. All right. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Well, I would have to say that if you control inflation, then the unemployment will work itself out. But if you let it run rampant, then inflation may actually create unemployment. Now, obviously, you can use inflation to get rid of unemployment, right? By injecting the country with a large amount of money, stimulate the economy. But what that's going to create is just another bubble that's going to pop, and unemployment will again, be a result. So I think you have to control inflation and let the unemployment, the job market, work itself out and stabilize. But with inflation, that's just never going to happen. It's always going to be this up and down, up and down, up and down, which I think is on purpose so that the rich people in the stock market and who own shitloads of land and all around the country, they can use these ups and downs, these bubbles, to manipulate the market for themselves so that they can buy low and sell high, and they'll always be on the top. Where the people, they only suffer because we don't have leverage, we don't have large amounts of money, we can just invest in things and change the economy. we're sort of just a victim. So I think getting rid of inflation is like a key uh, for the for actually having good unemployment, or low unemployment, but good employment. So yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. Let's see. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I'd have to say historically that's completely accurate. Unfortunately, it's a sad world, but yeah, they've proven themselves to be unreliable. Um, so yep, from each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. So I believe that's saying according to what a person can produce um, is to give to each according to their need. That sounds like some sort of redistribution of wealth type of sentence, at least from what I get from it. Could be wrong, but that's at least what it sounds like to me. If I'm wrong, then I will change my mind on this, but from the way I understand it, this is how I'm interpreting it. From each according to their ability, right? So from my work to each person according to their need. I just don't really. This sounds sort of like what? I'm gonna have to disagree with that. I don't. I just don't like that. It just sounds like everybody's gonna get taken care of from all the people's ability. I obviously don't want people to starve to death, but I think that um, this needs more information. So I'm going to disagree with it just because I don't really think it's definitive. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now bottled, branded consumer product. I think it's more sad that people buy that product. I don't really see the problem with a company trying to sell something. If it's stupid, no one's gonna buy it. So really, it's just a reflection of the people. Is it sad? I mean, yes, but I don't think the fact that it's a branded product is like an evil corporation thing. I don't think it's sad that the companies are doing it. I think it's sad that the people are buying it. So I think I'm gonna have to disagree. It's not sad that it's bottled and branded. It's sad that the fact that it's bottled and branded that people are buying it. So I think that this is not the right way to say it, right? If a product's bad, people won't buy it, and they are. So it's a stupid product in my opinion, because it's like you could just buy a freaking bottle and just fill it forever. Why are you buying a freaking piece of plastic water? So yeah, I'm gonna disagree with that one. See, land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Well, why? I think it's important that you can own land and do what you want with it. If it's the government's land, then they can tell you what to do with it. And land is something that, why shouldn't it be able to be sold to people? Like, let's say I buy it and the area gets developed around it, and I want to sell it for more. Why is that a problem? I don't see the problem with that, and if it couldn't be bought and sold, then how would you move around? How would they determine a value of a house? It's just, at some point, something has to have a price tag on it, or else people can just move wherever the hell they want, and there's no prices, right? That doesn't make any sense. So I'm gonna have to disagree that, it shouldn't That doesn't make any sense. Um, it is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I would actually have to agree with that, because somebody who just has a shitload of money and just buys a stock at, let's say, a penny stock, and just freaking boosts that way up artificially, people are going to be like, oh, I got to buy it. It's going up. They buy it, invest in it. Then the guy sells all his money or sells all of his stocks, and then it tanks, right? And those people lose their money. Those type of people definitely freaking, they contribute absolutely nothing, right? Absolutely nothing. So I agree that those people, that is regrettable. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I actually don't know what protectionism is, so I'll have to look that up. Let's see. Restricting imports from other countries through methods such as a tariff on imported goods. I don't see why it would be necessary. Like Trump is doing that because he doesn't want the trade deficits to occur with China. But at the same time, what he should be promoting is a way to create competition with the products that they produce here. He should create incentives for competition, not raise prices to fight it, because either China is just going to raise their prices, and then we pay it ultimately. You know, like if we need something, like let's say they raise the price on like aluminum for cars, we need that for cars. We need cars, so we're just going to end up paying it anyway. And then the government gets the money, and then what do they do with it? Give it back to us? What? So doesn't make any sense, really. I think that yeah, I don't think it's necessary. Sometimes necessary. I mean, okay, maybe there's like one situation, right? But I just don't think that protectionism is really. I guess to be logically consistent, I guess I have to agree, though I really don't like it. Okay. But I have to be logically consistent. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. All right, so this website, or this test, really likes to use these definitive words. You really have to be careful before just picking an answer quickly, because the only social responsibility, I mean, really, the only, I mean, come on, a company needs to focus on its customers. That is the absolute number one, because if you don't focus on the customers, then the shareholders aren't going to have any profit to be delivered, right? So it's at least has to have two social responsibilities, but they're saying the only responsibility. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, come on. I'm gonna have to strongly disagree, just because that's just like absurd. The rich are too highly taxed. Well, for me, I just think that most taxes in general are just not necessary. I mean, obviously we need to pay for things and roads and all this stuff, but I think that there are solutions, business solutions, that we could exchange the tax system with, that would be just as effective, if not more effective. And plus, if we just focus on the rich, right? The rich right now are basically taking their money and exporting out of the country. So they're not paying the taxes anyway. So what do? We could say that the rich are immoral with their money. That's true. But the reason they're taking it out of the country is because they're immoral, and because the taxes are too high. If the taxes were not as high, even though they're immoral with their money, it would be here and maybe they would reinvest it. But the fact that the taxes are, I guess, where they are, it's high enough where they're not going to keep it in the country. So I think that, I think logically they are too highly taxed. And plus, I think if you had more moral people, the solution would just be to pay people enough that these companies don't need to be taxed. I think that's really the solution here. You see all this talk of like, we need a wealth tax. It's like, well, okay, but that's only because the rich are greedy with their money. And so what we really should be promoting is more moral people who do business, not more strict laws on people. Because the ultimate solution of all of the world, any economic system, any political system, the failure is always with the people, not with the laws. Communism would work, a dictatorship would work, democracy would work if every single person was moral in the system. So the problem is that the laws can never fix immorality, because you're either going to get an authoritative government that restricts everybody, or you're going to have too few laws, which like the most immoral, smartest people are going to like control everything. And so what you need people actually to step in and, create the stand for humanity. Say, this is what we are as people, and fuck those people who are immoral, right? And we need to practice business habits based on that. Look at Walmart. Yeah, they have cheap prices, but they pay people like minimum wage, and they also only work them like just below the minimum amount of hours to pay them health benefits. And so like we should actually be protesting that. We should be going, look, these companies are like fucked up. They're the richest people in the world, and they pay their employees, nothing. And so we think that we should call the government and say, oh yeah, tax them. That's going to get the money back. No, it's not. They're just going to ship it out of the country. What we need to do is we need to say, look, we're not buying from Walmart until they raise the wages of their employees without raising without raising the price of the goods. Okay? And if somebody else wants to step in and do what Walmart does, but do it more ethically, then we'll buy from them. But we as the people have to take a stand. We can't think that taxes are going to solve it. They're just not. They're just not going to do it. So I'm going to have to agree with this. But my answer, I think, is a little bit more involved than just that simple agree, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm a Republican, whatever. Nah, come on. This is much more in depth than that. Okay. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Well, okay, so medical care is basically a service, right? They are doing something for you for the exchange of money. Now, should I say that you're not allowed to have a better house? You shouldn't be able to pay people to build you a better house? Well, no, you can do that. What about better, lawn service? Well, you can do that. What about better education? Well, yeah, you could do that too. But when it comes to medical care, you think everybody should get the same. Well, I think that if you're a billionaire and you can pay for some experimental cancer medicine that costs like $5 million a pill, yeah, you should be allowed to do that, because not everybody can have access to it. And it's just, it doesn't make any sense to say this guy can't even have the medicine because not everyone can. I mean, that's just like, how do you even get started? So, but I think there should be a minimum medical care, like a baseline that you can't go below for all people. But I think that, of course, if you can pay for some super expensive experimental breaking edge technology where they've just invented the first device ever, of course. And plus, that's going to help the rest of the world, because if that rich guy can spend $5 million on a pill for some cancer thing, then now that company is going to have that much more money to actually produce it at a cheaper price, create better manufacturing methods and all of that. So I think that the fact that there are higher levels of medical care is actually a good thing, because that way, when the more people buy it, the more it'll be accessible to people who can't afford it. Just like TVs, when the first TV comes out, it's like $5,000 and eventually gets $750. If you weren't allowed to buy that TV for $5,000, then the people would never get the money to create better manufacturing, cheaper manufacturing, to get the TV down to $700. So I think that you have to apply the same logic to this. So so I agree that they should have access to higher medical care. Let's see here. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Well, business should penalize governments that mislead the public. I mean, I guess so. Yeah, because I mean, it's just not the government. It's like the same thing as regulating, businesses. I'd have to agree, because companies have just proven that they cannot be trusted in those ways. So I'm gonna have to agree. Genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I would have to agree. Because again, companies just have proven themselves not to be able to be trusted. I think monopolies can be a great thing if they're used ethically, but the problem is that it just never happens. So I'm gonna have to agree with restrictions. So let's see. The freer the market, the freer the people. I say yes, I agree. Because logically, if there's no laws, you're super free. Doesn't mean you're better off, but if there's no laws and there's more freedom of market, you're gonna be more freer as a person. So you have to agree to that. There's just no other way around it. I mean, how do you become less free with less laws? Against who you can do business with. I just don't see how you could be freer with a less free market. It doesn't make any sense, really. All right, social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Well, I don't know about that. If there's somebody having an abortion, are they killing the thing that's inside them? Yes. You are killing it. I mean, there's no other way around it. Is it murder or not? That's up for debate. There's a lot of people that think it is murder. I think, personally, that it's more murderous the longer you wait. It's definitely seems to get worse the longer you wait. But is it murder? I mean, I guess maybe technically it kind of is, because it's a person, sort of. But I don't necessarily know if just because of that it should be illegal always. I don't really even know where I stand on abortion. It's a complicated issue, so I'm gonna have to say I disagree. It should always be illegal. And if a woman is raped, I think that there's certain things that's like, there's going to be some situation where it's not going to threaten her life, where people are going to be like, all right, let's let this slide. So I'm going to have to disagree. Let's see. All authority should be questioned. Let's see. Well, in order for an authority to exist, somebody had to think of it. So I would have to say that, of course, we should question it. I mean, obviously, not every situation should be beneficial by questioning authority, but to say you can't even think about the authority is just a little, ridiculous. So I'm going to have to strongly agree that it should be questioned, because, why does it exist in the first place, right? If authority is going to exist, there better be a good reason for it. So I think that it's very important to question authority. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, I think that's not a good way to live, because it doesn't solve the problem. if somebody's taking my eye, it's like, why are they taking the eye? We should fix the problem. But if we just take their eye, it's kind of like the damage has already been done, and now you're doing more damage. So I just think that that's going to cause more problems. It's going to solve. So I'm going to have to strongly disagree with that. Let's see. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Well, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I could see how maybe a theater or a museum could be good, maybe about promoting history or something like that. But do I think that museums are going to make it or break it for us as a civilization? I don't really think so. I think that if the people want a museum and find it interesting, it should exist, and if it doesn't, then it should go away. I think we should have to start living life based on what people want, not what people think we ought to want. So I'm gonna have to agree with that, especially because taxpayers, right? So the government is like saying what we should want, and I just think that's kind of dumb. Let's see, schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I kind of agree with that, just because the education system now is kind of degrading, and I think that maybe people would be better off pursuing some other method of education. Um, Maybe it doesn't exist yet, but I don't see why it's a law that somebody has to go to school. Obviously, people need to be educated, but I just don't think that it's like necessary in this day and age with the internet and stuff. So, I'm gonna have to agree with that. All right. Well, let's see. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Okay, well, what does this even mean? Um, it is better for different sorts of people to keep their own kind. Is that race? Different sorts. Different nationalities. Like, let's say a British guy and a German guy. I mean, is this like, yeah, like, I just think they shouldn't, because even if you're, I mean, that would be like say I can't be with my girlfriend. She's not the same kind of person, I guess. But it's again a little ambiguous, unkind. So I'm gonna have to strongly disagree with that, because I just don't think they're not telling you what they mean. It's sort of like open ended. It's kind of like it's like they're actually forcing you to show your ignorance by agreeing with this at all, because it doesn't actually tell you anything. So I'm gonna I have to disagree, because they need to clarify what own kind means. But even if they did race or whatever, I just still don't agree with that, because I just don't think that just because you differ on race, you can't be together, with somebody who is of a different race. It's just, come on. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. I actually don't really agree with that. I think that disciplining a child is good, but I don't think you have to spank them. Now, inflicting pain on them in some situations, accidentally or because it's necessary, I think could be permissible. Say a child was going to walk in front of a car and you yank his arm real hard to keep him from going out there. You did inflict pain on him, but it's not because you're trying to hurt him. You're trying to help him, and in the process, you inflicted pain on him or her. But to spank them intentionally with the idea of hurting them to do what you want, I don't think it's necessary. I think that if they're at an age where they can understand words, and that you can talk to them and explain to them why it's wrong. If you have to use spanking to correct their behavior, either you're not doing it right, or maybe they're too young to understand, which in that case you should just be patient and wait until you can talk about it with them. So Good parents and that's make sure I'm gonna have to disagree, right? Let's see. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Well, it's natural, I guess. How would it be unnatural? You know, children are embarrassed about things. They don't want to say anything to the parent. I think that's natural. Now, should they keep secrets? Well, that's up for debate, but is it natural? I mean, come on, it has to be natural. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. I think I agree with that because using marijuana, let's say I'm in my room and I just smoke a little weed or whatever, I don't see how that hurts anybody. Or let's say I'm not even using it. Let's just say it's sitting on my desk. It's just sitting there. Should that really be illegal because it's sitting on my desk and I intend to use it sometime in the future? I mean, that's just like ridiculously invasive, and it's just there's no real good reason for that. So I'm going to say it should not be a criminal offense. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. To find jobs. Prime function is to find jobs. Well, I don't know if that should be the prime function. What about creating jobs? Or being your own business owner, being self-employed? Should the school not also have that to be their prime function? I'm gonna have to disagree. I don't see why that the prime function should be to equip the kids with the knowledge to find jobs. Especially in the future where there's so much automation now. You know, I think being your own sort of creative person is going to be more important than ever. You know, getting the school system was based on like factory work and stuff, and I think that's just going away. So I don't think that that should be the prime function of school. All right. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. What kind of disability are we talking about here? Like you're born deaf? I mean, inheritable disabilities. I don't really see a problem with that necessarily. I think that people should be allowed to, because the problem is, right, is that when you start getting into these like technicalities, inheritable disabilities, it's like now the government is like trying to like tell people who they can and can't procreate with. And I think that you're gonna start getting to some gray areas here where people who should be able to procreate are not going to be allowed to because of like the definition of what a serious inheritable disability is. So I just think that people just let people do what they want. You know, if inheritable disabilities is a problem, we should try to minimize the production of them in terms of like what caused them in the first place. Now, obviously, if the cause is somebody who has that disability is reproducing, that's something you can't necessarily fix. But if some two people who don't have this inheritable disability create somebody who does, I think that we should try to figure out where that came from, not stop the people who already have it. So I'm gonna have to disagree. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. All right, accept discipline. What does that mean to accept it? I think the most important thing for children to learn is probably discipline, but accepting it, right? To be disciplined and to accept being disciplined. I think that's what they're saying. I think those are two different things, right? To accept a beating and to be a beater, I think they're two different things, I think. So I don't think the most important thing for a child is to accept discipline. It's to be disciplined. I think that they're saying that somebody is disciplining them, and I don't think that's the most important thing. The most important, really, the most important. How about being educated? I think that's more important than being just straight disciplined. So I'm going to have to disagree with that. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. Oh, okay. No savage and civilized people. Only different cultures. Well, I mean, I think that this is like, I mean, what's the definition of a savage, right? What's the definition of a civilized person? Kind of vague definitions, I guess, and they could change over time. But I guess if you want to like say that each one has a definition, do people apply to it? Yes, they do. So it's like you're forced to agree. But I think it's more important to focus on what people do and not define it. Like, oh, you're a savage. It doesn't help anybody. I think it's more important to like talk about what they're doing, not like try to define them with some term. So I just think this is sort of a useless question. But if you're trying to actually say what the definition of a savage is and the definition of a civilized person, that I guess people do fall into those categories. So technically, yes, I agree. To say that there's only different cultures is just like, a society that people murder each other, I guess, is not the same as somebody or a civilization where they talk about stuff and exchange goods. Yes, they're both different, but to say they're a savage and civilized, I just don't like that. But also, I would criticize the one culture for just murdering each other, right? So they're not just different. One is clearly might have problems. In general, happiness in the country or whatever the territory. So I just don't like this question, but I guess I'm forced to agree. Those who are able to work and refuse opportunity should not expect society's support. Okay, I say expect society's support. They're not saying not get society's support, but expect it. And I guess I have to agree, because if let's say I don't want to be a landscaper, but I want to do some other thing, but I need more time to think about it, and I don't have any money. Yes, I should get a job so I can live and then pursue that later. To deny a job and then I still have to buy food, but then expect like that guy to like say, okay, I'm not going to work for you, but you have to give me 10 cents and so does everybody else in this town, so I don't have to do that. I mean, come on, that's like, who can really support that? That's just like really selfish. That guy's not asking you to pay for him, so why should you ask him to pay for you just because you don't want to work that job? That's, I think, incredibly selfish. So I'm going to have to agree with that. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Well, okay, let's say you have an abusive parent. Is it better to just think about cheerful things and forget about it, or to actually think, what the hell's going on here? I need to solve this problem somehow. I think it's always better to think about a problem and look for a solution than just to forget about it and think about cheerful things. That's how people get into drug addictions, is because drugs are an escape. It makes you happy, takes you out of this, like, I guess this like world, right? Different mindset. And so people use drugs as an escape, and then they just end up becoming drug addicts and hurt their life. So I always think it's better to think about something even if they don't want to. Find a solution if possible. If no solution, then you gotta just figure out how to deal with it and maybe get out of it at some point. So I'm gonna have to disagree with that. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their country, within their new country. Okay, so let's say a guy from Germany moves to Austria. Is he never going to be fully integrated in the new country? Seems unlikely. And he's technically an immigrant. What about somebody from Canada moving to the United States? I'm going to say that's pretty unlikely that they would never be fully integrated in their new country. Some immigrants definitely might not immigrate or integrate, but to say that just first generation immigrants can never, I mean, that's just, again, just another blanket statement that you're supposed to like, oh yeah, I agree with that. I mean, come on. Nobody, how can you agree with that? You have to disagree. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Okay, so what if you're a company that only manipulates the stock market? Is that good for all of us? I don't think so. The most successful corporations, so let's say like Walmart, I don't think that they're benefiting their customers for sure because the prices are low, but they're not benefiting their employees. And I don't think it's good for all of us. See again, all of us. So I have to disagree again, just logically. I mean, they make these, they're like setups. Really, it's like trying to set you up for failure. So you have to really read these things. No broadcasting institution, however independent content, should receive public funding. Why is the government deciding what company should be funded? I just don't understand that. Unless I am misinterpreting public funding. Because I think whatever the people want should reign supreme. If people don't want to listen to something, then it shouldn't be propped up artificially by public funding. It should just die. So, yeah, I'm going to have to agree. Okay, now on to society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Well, here again, they use this word excessively. Not just that they are, but excessively. See, this is like, why? Why do they have to put that word in there? It's like now you have to somehow prove what excessive curbing is. I mean, come on. Can you just say being curbed excessively? Now you could create a divide in the people by saying someone who disagrees and agrees could actually be thinking the same thing, but how they define excessive is going to actually change the outcome of their ultimate results, which is just like, it's just like fake data. They're just creating fake data. So I'm just gonna say anytime our civil liberties are being curbed is excessive, because why are they being curbed? Okay. So I'm gonna have to say yes, because a lot of these anti-terrorism laws or acts that they've done are actually against the Constitution, technically. So I have to agree. I don't strongly agree. I wish I could say this question's bullshit, but whatever. I agree. Okay. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. We'll see, a one-party state has no opposition, so whatever they want gets done immediately. That's one of the reasons why China is progressing so fast as a country, because there's nobody to say that what they're doing shouldn't be done. Now, that's not to say that they're not doing a lot of bad things that are killing people, because they absolutely are, but they're progressing quite fast because of that. At least in one regard, right? They're not progressing very fast in, say, maybe like overall public health, but they're progressing very fast technologically, which may end up allowing them to improve public health with obviously in the names of all the people who are dying. But nonetheless, you have to agree to this, because if there's no opposition, you can progress much faster. So I agree. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Okay, well, let's see. The government's watching me. I'm not doing anything wrong, but why might I be worried? Well, I could think that maybe they're going to do something bad with the information that they get. Maybe I think that they're not trustworthy with the information that they're receiving. So, only wrongdoers need to be worried? I don't think so. I just don't trust the government, right? So I would disagree. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Okay, well, why? Why do we need to kill somebody who did something wrong? What is that? I mean, now you can make an argument saying, well, we should kill people because we don't want to pay for them to be in jail forever. It's like, okay, I guess. But at the same time, even though it costs money to keep that guy there, there's people working there which get paid to keep the guy there. So all the money just goes back into the economy anyway. So I'm not sure that's a huge problem. I just don't really agree with killing people, but that's just my personal thing. Maybe some people do. I think this is a small issue that doesn't really have a big impact on society, so I really don't want to pay too much attention to this. So I'm just gonna say disagree. But if somebody agreed with it, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I don't really care that much. So, it's not a big deal. But in a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. In a civilized society, well, how big is the society? They don't specify, and you must always have people above and people below. Well, I just don't think that's true. Maybe in our current state we have to, but to say that that's like a requirement forever to be a civilized society, I have to disagree. I mean, I just don't think that you need that. Abstract art that does not represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. What does that mean? Abstract art that doesn't represent anything. What do you mean represent anything? So you're just drawing random stuff on like a canvas? You're painting random things that are not a physical object? And to say that's not art, well, what is art anyway? I mean, I feel like this is getting a little too abstract with what the definition of art is. I think art could be anything at all. Now, it might not be good art, but it's art nonetheless, I think. So, and to say that abstract art shouldn't be art, I just think come on, I have to disagree. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Well, okay, so the question is, why did the person commit the crime? Okay, if you're somebody who doesn't believe in free will, then you're going to think that the person did the crime because of his genetics and the way he was born and the way he lived his life and the situations he encountered that caused him to act certain ways. It's just a snowball effect, which I actually tend to agree with. But nonetheless, even if it's not true, is punishing somebody really helping to solve the problem? I don't see how it is, especially for somebody who's old. Maybe a 2-year-old, spanking them could be effective. It's not necessarily the best for the child, but it is effective. A 42-year-old guy who murders his wife, what are you going to do to him that it's going to change the way his brain works? I just don't think it's going to happen. So I think that rehabilitation is really the goal here, right? You don't want people staying in jail forever. You want them to go to jail, be rehabilitated, and come back into society and be productive and improve society. So I think we have to disagree with that, don't you think? It should definitely not be more important than rehabilitation, don't think. Is it a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals? Well, I don't think the data is out for that yet, whether or not people can be rehabilitated or not. I know there's a lot of research being done with psilocybin, magic mushrooms, on what the effects it can do to your brain. Like people who have been addicted to, let's say, heroin for like 20 years, and they take one trip of psilocybin and completely rehabilitates them. They no longer want it, and they experience zero withdrawal symptoms. That's pretty powerful. I think that there could be some research done with that in criminals, but that is yet to be discovered. So to say it's a waste of time, I'm going to have to disagree, because there is no data out yet to prove that rehabilitation on some criminals is just entirely useless. We just don't know. Okay, so the business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Okay, so what are they saying? Let's say you're a civilization and you're basic. You need to survive. How do you survive? Is the person who creates maybe a business that can manufacture wood to build houses for the winter time? Is that more important than a guy who writes and does art? I would have to say yes. An advanced civilization like us, where a large part of manufacturing is automated, I don't think it's as important as it used to be. But nonetheless, I think it ultimately is more important in terms of survival. A writer and an artist are not going to do much to build, say, a house or to go hunting or something like that, or to produce a good that keeps you alive. It's more of an emotional thing, which is obviously important, but it's not as important as eating or, say, not dying of sickness or, the cold. So I would have to agree to that. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Well, okay, that's putting another blanket statement on all women. I do agree that women, females, biological women, there's been studies showing that they actually, I forget all the technical terms because I didn't pay attention that closely to what everything was called and memorize it. But basically, there's a part in the women's brain that when they have a child, they can actually like turn off all of the mother's wants and becomes completely empathetic towards the child, no matter what the child wants. So if the child wakes up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and this isn't like 5-year-old kids, it's like babies. It's like the baby cries, the mom will just endlessly serve the baby. Men do not have that. So I think that a woman is better at serving a baby than a man is, just because of the actual brain, right? But to say that that's their first duty in all situations, I think is a mistake. Because what happens if there's like a billionaire woman wants to have a child and the guy is like just basically a lazy couch potato? To say that she should be a mom is more productive to society and the kid, I think that's not true. I think that in that situation, the dad would be better a caregiver than the mom, even though the mom might be able to do it better, even though she's a billionaire. I just don't think overall for society and all of that it would be better for her to do it than the guy. So I would have to disagree with this. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. I'm honestly going to have to claim ignorance on this one. I'm going to have to do a Google search. Alright, well, I Googled it, and basically I was able to find something about plant genetic resources, something about how humans have basically induced a form of natural selection on plants to change their evolution to best suit our needs. Now, somehow there are multinational companies that are unethically exploiting it. I guess I don't understand how they are. I tried to do some research. I wasn't able to find too much data on that. I'm just gonna say I don't know about this question. So if somebody wants to fill me in on that, that would be great. And I would change my answer. But unethically exploiting the plant's resources, genetic makeup or whatever of developing countries, maybe I should disagree then. Unethically exploiting the plant's genetic resources of developing countries. I just don't know. So I'll just agree, whatever. I'll just agree with it. Let's see. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Well, okay. So you could hate the establishment, but making peace with it. I think making peace with things you disagree with is a part of being a mature person. Like you see now, the people walk around with Trump hats and they're like literally spit on. I think that is immature. I think you should make peace with them, even if they're on the other side. If you're on the other side of the establishment, the opposite or whatever, you still should make peace with it, because if you really believe the establishment is a bad place, you want the people in the establishment to take your side. You want them to understand why what they believe in is bad. And by not making peace with them, you're just prolonging, if what you believe in is true, the conversion of their belief. So I think you have to make peace with people and teach them why they're wrong with what they believe in. So I'm gonna have to agree with that. It is just really the only way I can think of here. All right, now we're on to religion. Not sure how religion has to do with political beliefs, but all right. Let's see here. Astrology accurately explains many things. Accurately and many. Ooh, those are disqualifying words, I think. I'm going to have to say I strongly disagree. There's not much scientific data that supports astrology in any way for accuracy, let alone the quantity of things. So I'm going to have to say no. Let's see. You cannot be moral without being religious. Well, I am somebody who is not religious, and I do consider myself being moral, but how do I know, right? Well, let's just say this. Logically, there was a time before the Bible. Okay. Now, did people have no morals before the Bible? If you believe that God wrote the Bible, and it wasn't written by people, even though there was a revision of the Bible somehow, but let's just say that God wrote the Bible. Now, did people have zero morals before it? I would say no, that they did have some morals. But now, let's say that people wrote the Bible, okay? That God didn't, but people did. And they wrote it because they're trying to promote morals for the rest of humankind or whatever. Whatever. So, to say if they did write the Bible, how did they have those morals to write about if there was no Bible? They must have had the morals, then wrote the Bible. So, and there's plenty of civilizations that didn't have religion that were very moral. Like I see Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, they get into like these arguments about religion and its usefulness. Obviously, it can be useful, but I don't think it's a requirement to be moral. What creates your morals is your upbringing, like your parents, your situations in life, how you react to them. That's what drives morality, not a book that tells you what to do. Right? If that were true, then why are there criminals in this country? Right? There's laws saying you go to jail and stuff. How is that any different than saying you're going to go to hell? It's almost like the same thing. So I don't think the book is what defines morals. It may aid it in some way, but I don't think that's the defining factor of what creates morals. So I'm going to have to strongly disagree with that. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. How do you define genuinely disadvantaged? Well, Social Security is a way to give people money after they retire who didn't save anything their whole life. So at least if they retire, they didn't save any money, they're going to get a little something. So is let's say millions of people who were not taught how to save money, is that genuinely disadvantaged? I would say yes. Charity doesn't do much to help them, but charity does seem to help people who have cancer and stuff like that. And charity, Social Security is not going to help somebody with cancer. So they kind of do two different things. Is it better as help? You see, again, they're kind of do two different things. Social Security does like a wider range of people, but charity, I think, helps more people, more specific people. But is it better? Well, how do you quantify that? So I'm gonna have to say I disagree because I don't think it's better than Social Security. I think they're just different, and so you have to treat them as such. And so yeah, it's not better. Maybe they're the same but different. That's how I look at it. Some people are naturally unlucky. Well, let's see. You could be born with cancer. You could be born with AIDS. Is that naturally unlucky? Yes. Strongly agree. Is it important that my child's school It is important that my child's school instills religious values. It's not important. Strongly disagree. Again, because I don't think it's the most defining factor in someone's outcome in life or morals or any of that stuff. Okay. Sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. Usually? Usually? What does that mean? Uh, if you believe in the Bible, then it always is. How is it usually immoral? I don't see how it's immoral. Two people are attracted to each other and they love each other. I don't see why they can't engage in sex. So I'm gonna have to disagree with that. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility to adopt or child adoption. Same-sex child adoption. Yeah, I know there's some studies that are out there saying that people who are in same-sex marriages who adopt kids, that the child like doesn't perform as well or something. But I still can't say that they should be excluded from that because of their outcome, right? I mean, should people who have lower socioeconomic status not be allowed to adopt kids because they're not going to turn out as well as somebody who's rich? I mean, that's kind of screwed up, right? And if you're going to exclude them based on the fact of some outcome, then any other relationship that could produce the same outcome based on that circumstance or variable would also have to be excluded. And I don't think anybody's going to pose for that. So I'm going to have to disagree. You just have to let people do what they're going to do. And hopefully by learning based on the outcomes, people say, oh, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to produce somebody who is, going to be challenged like that. So, I don't think you have to enforce a law to discriminate on that aspect. Let's see. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. I agree. I mean, if I'm going to take a picture of myself naked and send it to somebody, that is technically illegal, right? If you don't want pornography, because it is technically porn. But I think that should be legal. I don't really see a problem. I know that there's like no FAP and all that stuff, but to say that it should be illegal, I mean, come on. If no FAP is bad, then we should not FAP because of education. We shouldn't be avoiding pornography because it's against the law, right? I mean, we have to make better people here, not better laws. We need to enhance the quality of the people, not focus on making a law that we think is going to do that. It just doesn't work. So I agree. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. I mean, I'm assuming they're talking about something sexual, so I guess I agree. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults, like consenting is something sexual, is no business of the state. Unless they're trying to say it's like brothers or like incest. Well, adults, okay. Well, it's still, what if there were two 18-year-old cousins? I guess I still might have to say, well, I don't agree, but if that's what they want to do, I guess. I think there are kings in, I forget the countries exactly, but a long time ago, the kings of Europe would actually procreate with their brothers and sisters to keep the crown in the name of the blood family line, So it was an effective, I guess, practice. But but that's procreation. We're just talking about like maybe some sexual activity. I can't really say that the state should be getting involved in that. We might not agree to it. We could come up with our good arguments against it, but it's not killing people. You could say it negatively impacts their psychological state. Well, there's a lot of things that you could do that does that. That's not illegal, right? So I have to, no business of the state. I have to agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Okay. So what does naturally mean? That's like the one about it's natural to keep secrets from your parents. Naturally homosexual? Are they saying genetically? Like, is that like a natural thing? Or are they saying like that something caused them that's not natural? I don't know. I say it's natural. I mean, it's even in animals. Whatever the cause is, I don't think is important. Is it natural? Yeah, I guess it's a natural thing. I get to disagree, I guess. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. I don't think you can be too open about sex, but I think that too much of our society is being sexualized. Okay, that's not being open about sex. Is like, look, this is what sex is. You can do it with whom you like, and just be careful. And we're going to be open about it. We're not going to suppress things about it. But I think society has gone too far as to sexualize society. Like every commercial ad has some hot girl who's like half naked, right? That's like abusing like the sexuality. It's making everything about sex. I think that has gone too far. But I don't think the openness about it, I don't think being open about sex is a bad thing. I think suppression of it is more hurtful than being open. Now, whether or not two people should engage in sexual activity, that's a different argument. But to say that you can't be open about it, I think you should be open about it and explain all the negatives and positives about engaging in it. But to be open, I think, is always better than not to be open. So I'm going to have to disagree. So let's see where I stand. Okay. And it says I'm libertarian and slightly on the left. Okay. Well, I guess I don't really know. I like I said, I try to be as center as I can, left to right. Authoritative versus libertarian. Maybe I'm not so center on, just because it's a tricky one. I guess that has more to do with my own individualism, how I run myself. I run myself more like a libertarian. I don't need people telling me what to do. So I guess my thoughts are going to be more libertarian. But again, I'm still open to a sort of authoritative way of living, like the way China does it. Don't agree with everything the government does, but it has its advantages. So I'm open to that too. I really don't think I'm quite as far south on that spectrum as it says. But maybe for myself I am. But if I were to implement policy, I definitely wouldn't be that south, or maybe I would be depending on the situation. But I'd say it's pretty accurate. I would agree to that overall compass. So, yeah, if anybody disagrees with any of my questions, just leave a comment. I'd love to debate any of these things, because I'm always open to finding a new way of looking at it. We could debate on YouTube in the comment section, or we can debate on camera, not camera, but over microphone, I guess. And I could post that as a video too, so people could see the responses in voice instead of text. So just let me know, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.